In fact, you know what? I'll give you the $100 I owe Shazier.
I say Shaq doesn't pay out.
No, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to say this is from Ryan Shazier.
Shaq doesn't pay out. Shaq doesn't pay out.
You didn't even give me your Venmo, you bum.
Why you have to do this when you're playing the SEC or playing people that don't know you? But when it's people that do know you, you gotta play. You gotta play button up and have your tuxedo tied on tight.
They are working the Steelers-Ravens game in Week 18. What are we doing? Hey, Happy New Year there, Shazier. Did you hear? The team up north is just one win away from the national title.
Bro, don't remind me, man. Like, first of all, I already thought that they were the best team in college football. And now that I actually seeing it come to pass, man, let's talk about the Steelers instead.
I like where your head's at. They are just one win away against the arch rival Baltimore Ravens, who might be sitting all of their starters, and then the Steelers will need the Titans to beat the banged-up Jags or the banged-up Dolphins to beat the Bills, and then it is the playoffs.
So pretty much every week in Week 18 in the NFL, the last week, there's chaos. And going into this year, I didn't think it was going to be that much, but we finally got some. So, from Wondery, I'm Ryan Shazier.
I'm Dave Damashek.
And this is Gridiron Gut Check.
Yes, welcome to Gridiron Gut Check. Every week, I talk ball with Steelers icon, two-time Pro Bowler Ryan Shazier. Shazier, you ready to give my takes a gut check from a player's POV?
Yeah, let's get it going.
All right, let's do it, 5-0. The college football final, like we say, is now set. Michigan is going to face off against Washington next week for the Natty. Shazier, we all know how you feel about the Wolverines, but after the allegations in the show Penix put on against Texas, my gut is telling me the whole country, outside of maybe a portion of Michigan, is going to be supporting the Pac-12 in its last push for a title.
After Ohio State lost to the team up north, I thought that the team up north had the best roster and the best team and the best style of ball in the top four teams. I had a feeling that they were going to beat Alabama. Man, that game was really close because pretty much all season, Michigan, the team up north, they have been leading in pretty much every game they played in. And then, in the semifinals, it was a point in the second half where they were losing. So, man, it was a game.
First time all year that happened, that they were trailing at any point
in the second half. Yeah, so it was a really crazy game, but it showed you the grit that team has, the mindset that team has. I honestly thought Texas was going to be the ones that they were going to end up playing against. I thought Texas defense was better, but they had the turnovers. And Michael Penix, man, when you see him throw the football, I know there's a lot of great quarterbacks in college right now, but when you see him throw a football, I don't see many quarterbacks that's throwing the ball better than him and how pretty it looks. So I will be rooting for Washington because next year this will be a Big Ten versus Big Ten championship, but right now it's the Pac-12, obviously. And I know you're rooting for Penix because he was an Indiana product, but I still think Michigan is the better team. The way that they control the ball, the way they control the run game and their interior line, I think it's just going to be dominant when it comes to Washington. And I don't think Penix and his weapons will be able to perform the way that they were versus the team in Texas.
Well, first of all, regarding the both Final Four games, I thought it was kind of cool that it's set up as the four corners of football America pitted against each other. And I thought it played out in a sort of a traditional New Year's Day style, which is to say, it used to be when I was growing up, you would get these mid-'80s showdowns between triple option Oklahoma and can they bully their way past the high-flying Miami Hurricanes or some setup like that. Different styles that have not seen each other. And I thought that's exactly why I had the Huskies beating Texas. Those big physical receivers at Washington, never having played against them before, were going to be a handful up close the first time you got a shot at them. And that's exactly what gave Washington the big lead that they had there. I'm with you, though. I think Michigan is the team to beat here. It is a fascinating matchup, specifically Washington, by statistics and trophies and otherwise, has the best offensive line in the nation. And obviously Michigan brings it with that pass rush. That's where the whole game comes down, I guess, in the national title. I'm with you, though. I'm leaning Michigan a few days out before before the game kicks off there.
Man, yeah, this is not something that I'm really excited to hear about with, Michigan. They're about to possibly, most likely, win a national championship. The one thing that just was so concerning to me with this game, and I do think the college football playoff made the right decision when it came to teams, because obviously Florida State had a lot of kids opt out. Ohio State, they felt like they got the short end of the barrel. Georgia felt like they got the short end of the barrel. But when you watch these four teams, these were some of the best college football games of the year and possibly of the last few years. So this is exactly what we wanted to see when it came to college football games. And I think this final game will be a great game as well. The one thing that really bothered me was I was telling my dad.
I do have to say, I don't sit in awe, and I am not going to provide any spiritual backslaps to the committee for getting it right, as everybody is saying, because of the quality of the game. Yes, you could pit two teams that are going to play a good game against each other. That doesn't mean in a system that's supposed to be pivoting off of merit that they got it right. Maybe they did. I still think. And the big argument here's where I look back. Here's where I look back.
You're supposed to fit the best teams. Not because you're undefeated doesn't mean that you're the best team.
I didn't think Florida State should go, but I definitely hear the Noles Nation noise that they're making. And this is a brave position for me to take after Georgia did to Florida State what they did to them. I still think Florida State has a perfectly valid case. The quality of the games is not the committee's nominal responsibility. Yes, it is for their network partners. They love it, and the big brands and all that. But that doesn't mean that they deserve praise because the games were good. I mean, that's really not the standard.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that I feel like the committee did a good job of picking the four best teams. I feel like those are the four best teams. You can make an argument for Georgia, the this and that, but Florida State, they were not the best team without Jordan Travis. And I'm sorry, but they were not. And so I thought that they did a good job. The one thing that really bothered me, and I was telling my dad this the whole game, when Ohio State plays Michigan or the team up north, they have zero mistakes are made when they play them. It's like they play the perfect game. The perfect game. But when they play everybody else, it's like, oh, they almost throw a pick on the first play of the game. They bobble punts multiple times. They're missing field goals, bobbling field goal snaps. It's like, where is all this badness when you playing us? Why you have to do this when you're playing the SEC or playing people that don't know you? But when it's people that do know you, you gotta play. You got to play button up and have your tuxedo tied on tight. I just, it's crazy to me. But I'm also happy that I got to see a good game. And with all those blemishes and blunders, as my dad liked to say, because he likes to play chess, they still did exactly what they needed to do and win that game and show why they're the best team.
What I don't like is what you do see in our society is that when you win, it absolves you of pretty much any sin, it feels like to me, or largely at least. Now,
no, he still gets suspended.
People want to knock you down. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's exactly right. Yeah, Michigan's going to win, but the short term is going to be like Jim Harbaugh did it. He proved all his doubters wrong, and Michigan did it. And by the way, now he's going to make even more money by going to the NFL with the Chargers or the Raiders or otherwise, and he's going to leave what may end up still being a mess with sanctions leveled at the team, the program that he just built. But in the short term, look at what he's done, everybody. We were all wrong. You have to admit it. Michigan's great. Yeah, they are good. They also did steal signals, it would appear. So anyway,
but also
good for you, Michigan.
I know where Jim Harbaugh is not going. We'll talk about that later.
Oh, interesting. New England? He's not going there?
No, he's not. I don't know what coach is going to want to go to the team that we talk about later.
Okay, interesting. Okay, the Carolina Panthers? Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah,
the Ravens, as we talked about at the top there, are the team, it would appear, at least on the AFC, and after what they did to the Niners on the NFC side, and then did to what appears to be a rival in the playoffs, the Dolphins, over the last couple of weeks. It's really, I'm at a loss for superlatives for what this team has done to high-end teams that they faced all season long. They're likely to rest some starters against Pittsburgh. Lamar struggled in his last MVP season. Yeah, I'm assuming he's getting the MVP again in 23. But is this Baltimore's year in the big picture, Shazier? Forget about the Steelers game. They have bigger fish to fry, do the Ravens. Is this their year?
Man, it must be nice to be Jack Harbaugh. That's Jim and John's father. You know, like just to...
bad to be Ryan Shazier, the guy who roots against Michigan and against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, it must be nice to be their father, just to be happy for your kids in that moment, because this weekend was a big weekend for both of them. One clinched the playoffs and one is going into the national championship. So when you really think about the Baltimore Ravens, though, they have been playing the best brand of ball throughout the whole season. Obviously, the 49ers, you could say the 49ers as well, but then they went against them head-to-head, and they showed everybody that Brock Purdy, in that moment, when he's behind, when he has pressure constantly coming at them, and showing those guys that, hey, we respect your guys, but we respect our guys even more. And so Baltimore in this situation have showed that they're the bully on the block. And it's nobody in the AFC that I can see that's going to give them serious problems, because the one thing that Baltimore does a really good job of is slowing down the run. And this is pretty much an AFC North thing. You slow down the run. Once you slow down the run, you force teams to pass it when and where you want them to pass the ball. And when you force them to pass it when you want them to pass the ball, that's when they start sending those exotic blitzes, stunt you. And sometimes it may look like they're blitzing, but it's a fake blitz. Send one guy, send somebody to another zone. So that's why Baltimore right now is in a really good position, because everybody's so scared of Lamar and so scared of his legs. But they have a number one defense in the league. Then you have Lamar Jackson, who's throwing the ball probably better than he has his entire career. And he's not really leaning on his legs, but when he needs to lean on his legs, they're there. So to me, we're seeing a development of Lamar Jackson this year more than we have in the whole time he's been there. So if there's an assistant coach award, I think Todd Monken definitely deserves it, because the way that this offense is playing, how smooth they're running, they might not be the number one offense in the league, but when it comes to how smooth they're running and how poised Lamar looks right now, to me, I think Baltimore is nothing to play with. And I remember saying before Christmas that I felt Baltimore would maybe lose this game versus the 49ers, but win in the Super Bowl. I still feel they're going to still win in the Super Bowl if Baltimore gets into the Super Bowl. I don't think anybody in the NFC can handle Lamar Jackson. The only people that I think that can actually slow him down are possibly AFC North teams, because they already understand how to play him.
It's funny. Well, first of all, yeah, my skepticism going into the season and even deep into the season with the Ravens was not about Lamar specifically. It was more about the defense and whether or not it was stout enough on the back end and whether or not they would get consistent pass rush. And obviously they've solved both of those things. And also, I didn't know if they, Ronnie Stanley, the assumption, this all pro left tackle and a team that obviously wants to protect its QB in Lamar, that was not a small matter for 2 or 3 years, and it kind of dented the Ravens. Ronnie Stanley this year, just no matter. Like you say, Monken, they are a pass-first team, really, despite Lamar and Gus Edwards and everything else. I think you just said it right at the end there. The Cleveland Browns, weirdly, are the team I bet you that the Ravens fear most. And if it's not the Browns, I know people will call me biased. I also don't think they want to catch the Steelers either. Lamar doesn't have a great track record against Pittsburgh. And I also think it's true, and I think you've actually said this, Shazier, the more looks you get at Lamar, the better you are going to be against him. That might be old thinking, though, because this is a different Lamar than we've seen over the course of his career. But over the preceding, 5 years or so, the more you look at Lamar and what they were trying to do, it was easier to slow them down. All that said, yeah, listen, you get the first seed and you have to play one less game. The evidence is there for you. If you get a bye in the 21st century in pro football, your chances of getting to the Super Bowl increase exponentially. So yes, you'd have to be crazy to take anyone other than Baltimore out of the AFC at this point.
Yeah, because when you think about Baltimore, they have losses to the Steelers, they lost to the Browns, then they lost to the Colts, correct? Think about that. 2 of their 3 losses are to people in their same division. And obviously we don't know how it's going to pan out, if they're going to win or lose, if Lamar Jackson is playing or not playing versus the Steelers this Saturday. But that has to be scary, knowing that you have a smooth path into the playoff if you don't play one of your divisional teams. And with the Browns, Baltimore has the number 2 defense. The Browns have the number 1 defense. And with the way that the Browns are playing defense, and then the way that the Steelers understand how to slow Lamar down, I think it's going to be very difficult for other teams to slow them down if the Steelers and the Browns both get knocked out of the playoffs before they even see the Ravens.
And I do have to say, I get it. We want to be cynical and declare teams finished and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to have to see it with the Chiefs. I know they don't look good, and this is not a 2-week cold snap or anything. This is more like a 2-month ugly stretch for them. I still am going to need to see someone eliminate them from the AFC side before I believe that they're truly mediocre adjacent, as they have appeared to be, like I say, for the last handful of weeks. Moving on November 26th, the Eagles engineered a big comeback to take down the Buffalo Bills in OT. You remember it as exciting. Jalen Hurts out-dueling Josh Allen, probably cinching himself the MVP and a number 1 seed, or at least the NFC East. For the Eagles, now all of a sudden, they just gave away the East to the Cowboys by losing at home to the Arizona Cardinals. We had some serious questions earlier this year about this team when they handed the D over to Matt Patricia. Now they just gave up 35 to the aforementioned Cardinals. What can they do, if anything, Nick Sirianni on down, to get right before the playoffs start, Shazier?
Man, so the biggest thing that's so crazy with the Eagles when you think about this team is that they have Kevin Byard, they have Bradbury, they have Darius Slay, Maddox, Bradley Roby. They have a lot of veteran pieces when it comes to this secondary, and that's the weakest point of their team. Well, I wouldn't say the weakest point, but when you think about their pass coverage and how they're slowing down teams, the area that they thought it was going to be a strength for them, the D-line and the secondary, now that's starting to be an area of concern. And that's why they brought in Bradley Roby, so they can help, with Devontae Maddox coming out. He has the veteran presence. He helped a little bit. But when you think about just Bradbury, he's constantly getting penalties. He's constantly getting beat in clutch situations. Darius Slay has been hurt. Man, Patricia's going to have to really figure something out, because when it comes to playing some of these better teams in the playoffs, they're going to put up points. And I understand that the Eagles also put up 30-plus points themselves, but it's very nerve-wracking how they're pinning up 30 points. When you even watch the Eagles play, it seems like they can't run the ball. When they do run the ball, it's like they're running it with Jalen Hurts on quarterback sweeps, which is still very awkward for you to have an MVP/candidate at the beginning of the season. And you have A.J. Brown, who is one of the top receivers in the league. You have Dallas Goedert. You have Devontae Smith. So then you also have all these weapons out there, which you're still not throwing the ball effectively. To me, it's very concerning just on every aspect of this team, because in the last year, in those clutch situations when the game's on the line, Jalen Hurts is making the plays to win those games.
Okay, but I go back to what Nick Bosa said after the Niners beat the Eagles and before the Eagles went down to Dallas to play the Cowboys. He said, "We just showed you how to stop Jalen Hurts. Hopefully everybody is following the formula." I go back to the same question we talked about 3 weeks ago. What do you think has been picked up specifically with your X's and O's, style? What are you seeing that they are able, if you take this away from what Jalen Hurts wants to do, this is how you can slow that offense down?
So, first of all, the 49ers are the first team that really just showed them, hey, you can't let them run the ball at all. So now when you don't let them run the ball at all, now they're going to force Jalen Hurts to run the ball.
I guess that's it, right? Yeah, right.
Now you force Jalen Hurts. They still going to want to run the ball, but in football, a lot of people that don't know the X's and O's in football, whenever you do a quarterback run, you always have an extra man. Because it's normally an 8-man box, 7-man box. But when you run the quarterback, you have an extra man because the quarterback is normally out of the play on a running down. But when you run the quarterback, you have an extra man, so it allows you more opportunity to run. That's why Coach Meyer used to love running Tim Tebow, and that's why Lamar Jackson runs so well and Jalen Milroe runs so well, because you're allowing your quarterback to be the running back. So now there's an extra blocker who is the running back to block for your quarterback. But
you're always putting stress on the edge defender when you do that. When you run as the quarterback at him, that you might leave the ball with the running back. I might run it right at you, or I might just pull it back and throw it over you. It creates a lot of, like I say, stress on some particular defenders out there. It's a hard thing to stop. And it's funny to me that I've always heard that the way you stop that, when I've asked guys on the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers and physical defenders, what do you do when a guy's running around like that? They say, what you have to do is hit him hard early. And I say, well, come on, Terrell Suggs, you're playing to stop Colin Kaepernick is to just hit him hard? Like, yeah, that's right. That's right. It breaks his will to do that. That is the method, I guess. It sounds crazy in 2024. I almost said 2023. But anyway, fascinating.
So instead of dragging him down, attacking him by the legs, you got to hit him right in the chest. You have to make him feel these hits, because now you're making him a runner. So you can hit a quarterback however you want when he's a runner. You can't hit him however you want when he's a thrower, but when he's a runner, you can hit him however you want. So if you start hitting him like a running back and making him feel that pain, now the ball is getting a little bit looser. Now he's trying to brace himself a little bit more for runs. So later in the game, you're not allowed, you can't, he's not willing to run through a tackle. He's not willing to fight for the extra yard. So the 49ers showed everybody how to do that. The Dallas Cowboys came back and doubled back and did the same thing. But so when you think about that, both of those teams also have good DBs, and they both also have good pass rush. So that allowed them to say, hey, we're going to sit back and cover 4, match coverage. So now you have to throw it in tight windows because we're about to put a bunch of pressure on you so you can't run the ball. And so Jalen Hurts is not as healthy. You having him get hit and you having him throw it in tighter windows. Now these games are a lot closer. Now the defense, instead of with them playing with a lead, they're playing from behind. And this defense right now, they have shown that they have not been able to stop anybody when it comes for them playing from behind.
Yeah, I think it's right. Surprising, too, given what you know about the Eagles over this 2-year run. A lot of it, and maybe has been obscured by what they have at the line of scrimmage and the advantage that they have most weeks there. But to your point, Bradbury coming over and going on the other side from Darius Slay was the hidden edge that they had last year. Slay's been banged up this year. Maybe that's enough to get them right once the playoffs start, if Slay is back and at full strength for that. Otherwise, I just, it's a bummer, but it is a reminder. The worst thing you can do if you want to win the Super Bowl is go to the Super Bowl the preceding year and lose, because that puts some weird pox on your chances the following year. Go through the record book and check it out, and you'll see I'm right about that one. Anyway, up next, Shazier and I are going to tell you how to save bowl games, and then we break out the nickel package. All right, Shazier. So after FSU was shut out of the CFP, they got blown out by Georgia 63-3. We talked about that a little bit. The score was misleading. FSU played without 29 of their scholarship guys, so who really cares? And then Georgia's head coach, Kirby Smart, says, we need to fix this. And I think when he says we need to fix this, Really, how are you going to compel these kids, many of whom want to go on and play pro football or want to stay healthy for the offseason and the next college football season? How do you compel them to play in what amounts to meaningless ball games, exhibitions that benefit the school, but not the player? How say you, 5-0? I don't think the expanded CFP is really going to solve these bowl games that aren't a part of the actual tournament.
The bowl games that's not a part of the tournament, if you have a serious consideration of making it to the NFL, I think it's going to be very hard for a guy to still play in these bowl games. The only way that I think that they're going to get guys to play in these bowl games, they've already started it because they made college football really big about money. They made it really big about how important, taking care of your body, taking care of your money, providing for your family. So I think one of the biggest ways that they can start tying guys in is by tying NIL to these bowl games. So if you're in part of your NIL contract is you have to play in this bowl game. But if you're Marvin Harrison, you might not get the whole contract, but it don't matter what you about to pay me in NIL. It's not about to be $25 million, $30 million. So, but I think pretty much anybody else throughout college football, if you're not a guaranteed first rounder, guaranteed second rounder, or first rounder, if teams and colleges can understand how to tie NIL into it, I think that can keep a lot of these big time players into these bowl games. But if not, if I'm playing in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, I'm sorry. I don't want to be in El Paso for a game that doesn't mean nothing. I'm just being completely honest with you. It might mean something to the school. The school might be getting money. The fans might want to go to El Paso, Texas. But I'll tell you one thing. Ryan Shazier, if I was in 2023, 2024 right now, that's one bowl game that I will be sending out.
Well, point of fact, you are in 2024. So am I. But
somebody
as
a college kid going.
You meant as a player. I got you. Okay. Now I'm up to speed. Okay, yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, these grown-ups trying to twist the arms of these student athletes so that they can enjoy the 3 hours of exhibition football is, if you take a step back, you would realize that is silliness. And the situation those guys tried to create about, like, you don't play in this bowl game, it's going to show you don't love football, and then teams aren't going to want to draft you. I refer you to Christian McCaffrey on down. It does not hurt your draft stock.
It doesn't hurt your draft stock.
It. It's a business. It's a business choice, obviously. Right. But I mean, it's ridiculous that they even tried to do that. And those guys who did try to sell that, like, okay, don't play in the bowl game, but you might drop to the second round. It was so lame.
I remember talking to staff for the Steelers when I was hurt. And I used to ask them, does it really matter if a player doesn't play or does play during the bowl game? They said, basically, majority of the time, it doesn't matter as much, but it does. It is always a good look. It always shows us who likes the game a little bit more than who doesn't. But if you're like a guaranteed first or something like that, it makes sense. You're trying to protect yourself. But for the guys that are later, it's always good to get more film to see how they're doing, to see how they look in this moment. But most teams will prefer you to play in it. But at the end of the day, it's not something it's a guarantee that you have to do.
Of course, if they need more tape on you, that's one thing. But you're talking about a high pedigree guy, and the Steelers just brought into the practice squad a guy who they're trying to use to fill your one-time role, Jalen Smith. Ask him if it was worth his while to play in Notre Dame's last game, or if he wish he had that to do over again.
Because he got hurt.
You know what? Yeah, badly too. Yeah, really ripped up his knee. And you know what? He did end up making his money, so it ended up being a nice story. But what might have been? You know what? What is going to be? The nickel package. And we're going to get to those quick hitters right now. 5 questions, 5 very brief answers. 5-0. Are you ready? That doesn't count as one of the questions.
You sure?
All right. Oh, you seem excited about it. Okay. Miami pass rusher Bradley Chubb tore his ACL with just 3 minutes left in that Dolphins blowout at the hands of the Ravens. His team was down 30. A lot of people, I noticed the reaction wasn't, oh man, well, I am seeing the reaction. Boy, this really hurts the Dolphins' chances in the playoffs. But also, why was he even out there with 3 minutes to go in a blowout? How say you?
It's really difficult because every coach and every team is a little bit different. I remember we played the 49ers in my second year. I had about 16 tackles in the game. We were smacking them. Colin Kaepernick came to Pittsburgh. We were beating them pretty bad. And we was up about 20, 25 points or something. It was a nice win. And it was 5 minutes left in the game, 4 minutes left in the game. And I made a tackle and got like a really bad stinger in my arm, my whole shoulder, like a really bad one. And my teammates started bothering me because I had like a neck brace on the next day. And it was like, what's wrong with you, bro? You're not that hurt. But it was, but people used to ask me all the time, like, why were you still in the game? Why are you still in the game? As a competitor, most of the time you still want to be in the game because in that moment, it's just like Bradley Chubb, he still probably have incentives when it comes to sacks. You still have things that you can do when it comes to just trying to go into the next week with some type of momentum. So, and then also, some people are just sore losers. So when you're a sore loser, somebody that hates losing, most of the time, you don't want another guy to go back in there, get an opportunity, they get that sack, or you go in there, you get blown out, and you just walk out early and just be on the sideline, just looking at the other guys who were no part of this, now they're in the game just because you got blown out. Most of the time, when people are losing pretty bad, unless you're like a quarterback or certain positions, you prefer to stay in the game because in the NFL it's very stat based, but then it's also when you're losing, you don't really want to quit on the game that you already kind of lost.
I think that's right. I think people struggle to understand that these two things, whether they're siloed, the desire of the individual versus what's good for the team and all that. But it's easy to sit watching the game on TV and be like, well, get him out of here. This game's decided, so leave him out there. One, practically, it's not like they have 120 guys standing there on the sideline waiting to run in there. Obviously there's a practical need to fill 11 spots on the field at any given time. One, so everybody of value can't sit down all of a sudden because the game's over. One, and two, to your point, yes, as you hear ad nauseum, it is a business, and to some degree, you want the team to do well and you want the buy-in and everything else, but it does matter come contract time if you got an extra sack or if you scored an extra touchdown or you rushed for an extra 100 yards somewhere along the way. That is a factor when you sit down to negotiate your deal. So if you can get those in garbage time, I don't think the negotiator across from you is like, yeah, but that was against the Niners and that game was already in hand. So we're going to ding you a little bit for that sack you got late in the fourth quarter on Colin Kaepernick. That doesn't happen. So yeah, I think obviously it makes sense. And I said I wanted quick answers, and that was not a quick answer out of Damashek, so I'm going to paste it up here. Puka Nacua is 29 yards away from breaking a rookie receiving yardage record that stood for 63 years. Amazing. Is he your offensive rookie of the year, or is it CJ Stroud, Shazier? And don't be biased.
So you're like 60, right?
Yeah, I'm 60. Yeah, that's why I'm 61 years young this spring.
So to me, obviously I want to be biased. I want CJ to win the Rookie of the Year. I want him to, I think he earned it. When you think about it, he had a stretch when people were even talking about him as the league MVP. So when you think about the impact that he had on the city of Houston, where everybody thought that this team was going to be still bad until they got some more pieces and move up. You just never know. But now when you really think about it, if somebody's going to break a record that's been around since the year you were born, man, I think it's going to be hard to take that away from him. So as an Ohio State Buckeye, I would love for CJ Stroud to have the MVP. I think he has done enough to win it. But if somebody's breaking a record that Justin Jefferson never has broken, that all these other wonderful players who never has broken it, I think he definitely deserves it. But you got to think about it. It's a quarterback versus a receiver, and they're thinking about who's more important to their team in this moment. So,
well, it's not supposed to be about that. It's not about value as the MVP is supposed to be about. And obviously that's not always about greatest value so much as it is who had the best season. But yes, Offensive Rookie of the Year, to me, it is Puka Nacua. And if CJ Stroud had been healthy and they were still riding high, they may still get into the playoffs. Then it's a different conversation. But he did get hurt. And Nacua, while Cooper Kupp was sitting down for stretches, still kept the Rams above water with Stafford. I think you have to give him the award. I don't know if you heard, Shazier, but there's more melodrama in Pittsburgh heading into Week 18. Mason Rudolph, this is a good story. He's played really well. 2 straight games. He's put up 30 points for a team that had not hit 30 at any point before he took over for Mitchell Trubisky, who, of course, took over for Kenny Pickett. But Kenny Pickett thought he was getting the gig back when he was healthy. It turns out they're sticking with Mason Rudolph. Now Pickett is upset because he feels like people in the media are questioning his character. My question is, should he get his starting gig back now that he's healthy? As they say, starters shouldn't lose their slot because of injury, but that seems to be exactly what's happened here because Rudolph has been that good.
We was talking before, and you said the best example for this is Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe. Obviously, Drew Bledsoe just got a new contract. Kenny Pickett is not Drew Bledsoe, but Tom Brady came in and he just was performing at a level that you couldn't take him out. Going into this season, going into the last year, and even with Kenny's hurt, you can't say that there wasn't a guy that was rooting for Kenny more than I was, because I definitely felt that the Steelers win when he plays. And I heard a crazy stat today is that the Steelers are 9-3 when Mitch Trubisky plays less than half the game. So basically, if Kenny Pickett or Mason plays, they pretty much win. When Mitch plays, they pretty much lose. So in my opinion, I think right now, especially the way that he's playing, Mason gives the team the best opportunity to win. The right thing, the right thing to do is, give Kenny his chance back. But when it comes to what is the best thing to do and what is the thing that can possibly get this team into the playoffs and scare a lot of teams in the playoff, if they continue to play the way they played the last 2 weeks, is having Mason Rudolph at the helm. Because with Mason at the quarterback, it's allowing us to have more vertical threats down the field. And when we have a vertical threat down the field, then it causes teams to sit in that too high defense. And when in that too high defense, that's when Najee and Jaylen Warren are able to really go ham in the running game. And this whole season, people haven't really been respecting our passing as much. So they've been sitting in 1 high coverages and pretty 8-man in the box. But now with us being able to attack down the field, I think Mason gives us the best chance to continue to go further this season.
I mean, obviously, I completely agree. And practically from a quarterback standpoint, the way Mason Rudolph will stand in the pocket when it's as muddy as it can possibly get, when there are guys literally touching him, trying to pull him to the ground, he will hang in there, keep his eyes downfield and make the play. And the other 2 guys were not doing that. I do think... I guess there's something to be said about, standing by your principles when it gets hot. And, if the standard is we do not take away a starter's gig because he gets hurt, well, now this is an example of you going against that. Still, it would be ludicrous if they would have sat Kenny Pickett. I get where he's coming from to the extent that on your earlier point about Trubisky, if Pickett doesn't get hurt against Arizona, I think the Steelers probably win that game. If they don't win that one, I think they certainly win against New England the following week. Against Indy, if they win any one of those games, the Jacksonville game, when Trubisky is in there, if they win any of those with Pickett under center, then we're not even talking about Mason Rudolph, and this team is already in the playoffs and all of that. So I get his frustration. I hope he has the good sense, the long-term view that I'm going to get to compete again come August and before that. But in the meantime, what's best for the team is obviously the guy who's put 30 up in consecutive weeks. We have to roll with him.
We can say the same thing but the 49ers, they got that opportunity with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy came out there second half of the year and just start performing at a level that people was like, man, this is unrealistic. And Mason right now, he's playing, if you're talking about the last 2 weeks, Mason Rudolph in the last 2 weeks is playing like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. So if you just...
Yeah, is it sustainable? I don't know. What I do wonder, Shazier, is what the Steelers' brain trust now thinks about this. I don't think Pickett complaining about, I thought I was going to be the starter and now I'm not, and I'm a little caught up in my feelings about that. I don't think that impacts anything that Omar Khan and Andy Weidel and Mike Tomlin and R2 have in store this offseason. I do wonder if they can keep Mason Rudolph, or if Mason Rudolph is like, I'm going to take a deal from any team I can after the way I've been treated in Pittsburgh here, that I was the last possible option that you went to, even behind Mitchell Trubisky stinking it up for 3 weeks. I could see him having enough of an ego to say, I need a fresh start and I'm going elsewhere no matter what you offer me.
If he leads his team to the AFC Championship, he might be like, hey, I showed you what I can do. Give me another shot next year.
Okay, listen, I'll take it. Deal, Mason Rudolph. You get this Steelers team to the AFC title game this year, and I will give you $10 of my own. In fact, you know what? I'll give you the $100 I owe Shazier.
Well, I say Shaq doesn't pay out.
No, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to say this is from Ryan Shazier.
Shaq doesn't pay out. Shaq doesn't pay out.
You didn't even give me your Venmo, you bum.
You have my number.
After the refs did. All right, we'll settle this hash when we're finished here. Please don't shame me in a public forum like this. Now, after the refs did whatever it was that they did at the end of that weird Lions-Cowboys game, the NFL reportedly disciplined that ref crew by downgrading them, which means they're going to be watching the playoffs at home. Did you hear the big news, though? They are working the Steelers-Ravens game in Week 18. What are we doing?
And that's a primetime game.
Any reason why?
It's another primetime game. Another primetime game. So I just don't understand it.
What are we doing?
I don't understand it. But at the end of the day, there's only so many refs, and they have to coach. They have to ref a game. So I don't know why they chose that game. But at the end of the day, I just hope that game doesn't affect the outcome of the game at all. I just hope that the refereeing doesn't affect the outcome of the game. But I think it is important that what the NFL did, they made a decision and said, hey, right now, these guys are not reffing at their best ability. It's multiple times, and there's film of things that's happening that's not working in the best of the interests of the league. And one thing about the NFL, they'll always tell you nothing comes over the shield. So when it comes to them damaging the brand of the shield, I think it's very important that everybody in the world know, but everybody that watches NFL knows that these guys are not allowed to referee a game in the playoffs. I think that is important for everybody to know that won't happen in the playoffs.
I get it. Goodell has to balance this thing out, and he can't disparage the refs outwardly after every terrible call. But on the other hand, asking us to not believe our own eyes and saying, hey, for the most part, these guys do exceptional work. Obviously, that's not true. You hope the game doesn't come down to the officials. 98% of the games come down to the officials making terrible calls. What are we talking about? The influence is too much. These school marms, and I've had it. I'm moving on now. And misery loves company. And as you can tell, I'm miserable. And you root against Michigan and Baltimore, so you're miserable. And our producer, Hank, is also miserable because he loves the Texas Longhorns, who, if you didn't hear, they just lost. They were this close to completing the comeback against Washington in the Sugar Bowl. And for all the noise about Michael Penix and Sarkisian's rise from his professional ashes and all the rest of it, the biggest buzz was, why aren't they putting Arch Manning in there instead of Quinn Ewers? And maybe he can rally this team. Is Arch Manning bigger than Texas, Shazier?
That's the thing when it's certain guys that join certain teams. Bronny James, when you think about it, when you think about these big, polarizing, talented guys, Arch Manning, his family history, when you have that type of family history and just what's going on in your career, man, it makes it very difficult for wherever you go and whoever you're playing against or performing with. Think about it. Arch Manning is a great talent. His family, two Hall of Fame uncles. His father in the NFL as well. It's just his family history is amazing, and people in Texas and around the world want to see that happen. They love storylines. They want to see that storyline happen. The unfortunate part about Arch is most likely Quinn Ewers is not going anywhere. Quinn Ewers, when he came out of high school, was rated one of the highest rated players to ever come out of high school ever. Like, when I mean ever. So, and then he leads his team to an 8-4 record last year, and then they go to the college football playoffs this year. I don't see Arch Manning coming in and taking over that job from Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers, he's proven that he deserves to be in that spot. And I understand that people think Arch, it might be his time, but he's redshirted. And then, hey, Arch might come out the year after next, sit behind, and then gets to play 1 year and be in the NFL. And their family story is still going to be going smooth.
You know what I think? There's an available slot at Pitt right now. They need a quarterback. Maybe Arch could transfer up to there, do really well, be a Heisman candidate, and then the Steelers could draft Arch Manning, and then he would walk across the hallway. What could possibly go wrong, right? All right, that's it for this episode of Gridiron Gut Check.
Hey, we tried the walk across the hallway quarterback already.
Oh, wait a second. You make an interesting point.
We tried that already. But I know one place that doesn't have a quarterback right now. It's called the Ohio State Buckeyes. Make sure to follow, rate, and review the show on wherever you're listening. Check us out on YouTube on the Wondery channel, and make sure to hit the subscribe button. See you all next week.